Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 7th of April, and this is Indexer Office Hours 251. Welcome, everyone, to today's conversation. Those who are new to Indexer Office Hours, this is the town square where graph ecosystem participants come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexers. As always, as I like to say, this is a conversation and we do love participation, so feel free to get involved in today's conversation via voice or text. And if you're having any challenges there, just do let me know and I will get that sorted for you. As a reminder, this session is going to be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube, so if you are concerned about privacy, just bear that in mind. And with that, let's get into today's exciting agenda. As always, I hand off to... Thank you. Appreciate the round of applause. As always, I like to hand off to Carlos for our regularly scheduled Repo Watch section.
Hello everyone and welcome back, and this one is going to be a very short one. So this week things have been very quiet and we only have one release to report on, which is a new patch version from Streaming Fast for Firehose Ethereum. We're now at 2.17.1 and it has a few fixes to the D-Star library, nothing too urgent. And that's all I have for this week. So handing off to Roman. Thank you.
God, seems that people are loving these sections. And now with some breaking news for Protocol Watch. Joking, of course. Starting with Protocol Watch, we have forum governance, as always. There are two things to cover here. There's a thread regarding a potential separate withdrawable bucket for fully thought delegation tokens. I think it's more of like a proposal / request for Graph Explorer, if I'm not mistaken. Then we have GRC003, which is Rust subgraph mappings, a native Rust ABI for GraphNode. That one's, I think, yours, right, Petko? So yeah, there's more Rust apparently coming our way. Then for forum research, we have some of the core dev updates. It's that time of the month. That includes Edge and Node and GraphOps this time. All of those are usually pretty lengthy, so they're linked in the agenda if you're interested in any of those teams. Yeah, that's pretty much it for research. For contracts repository, we have a few PRs, not that many, mostly regarding some audit fixes and some post-Horizon transition period cleanups, as well as some dependency bumps here and there. And own network subgraphs updates since last IOH, and that's pretty much it for Protocol Watch. So I'm gonna hand it over to 𝗨𝗂𝗧 now.
Damn, you guys were extra fast today. Love it. I love it. Okay,
we can probably make some time if we want to chit chat, of course, but I think we're good.
Yeah, no, we've got plenty of content today, so we are good. Good stuff. Okay, Petko, ready for your update?
Yes, the update is very brief. I talked it over with Slim, and what needs to happen and what will happen is that the SPS subgraph rewards will be disabled by the subgraph availability oracle. Because it really doesn't make sense given that they are disabled in GraphNode for them to keep being there. There is a longer discussion around all of this, but right now that's the update because nothing else is certain. But yeah, they will be removed from the Oracle because if they're not in GraphNode, it doesn't make sense to have them in the Oracle.
Gotcha. I know, Matthew, you were the person who asked for that update, so does that suffice? Any follow-up questions, any thoughts? Any ETA for that?
Pretty much as soon as possible. I'm hoping to get it done by the end of this week. I'm working on it with Miguel from the protocol team, so I would say end of this week.
Boom, there you have it. End of this week is when things are in play. Good stuff. I see a thumbs up, which means Matthew's happy. Thank you so much for going away and getting the information there and bringing it back to us at 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗂𝗧. I really do appreciate you, sir. And now for the all-awaited Rem. He's been very patient with us. And any updates on the ARIA rollout? I guess you guys will have a chat in the chat box about that, but I want to make sure Rem has his space for the presentation. So Rem, feel free to take it away.
Wow, you have all been quick today, so let me quickly share my screen. There are a few things I could potentially go over. I didn't get everything I wanted ready. I'm actually too busy working on other things like the ARIA rollout, actually, to be preparing many slides and presentations. But I did want to walk you through a little bit of just how the Horizon payments model basically works. There's a few other things I can go over as well if they come up. But I'm going to start, I'm curious. If I talk about the Horizon payments model, how many people think that they already have a pretty good understanding of how payments work in Horizon, and how many people have some questions, and it's all a little bit, it happens, but not necessarily how all the pieces fit together. I see that's got a couple of people typing, and just while I'm giving people a little bit of a chance to put some questions or some thoughts about that, what I'm going to walk through here is actually a very simple diagram. I'm going to go through a few phases of showing what the generic model looks like, and then showing how that applies both to query fees and to indexing fees. Still no questions, so I'm going to, if I can find
We've got a couple of responses in the chat, just saying that people don't really understand how all the pieces work together. So it might be a good idea to go through it to help people grok everything and how everything plays together. My understanding of how it works is magic. So maybe you could demystify that for a few people.
Yeah, that is kind of the plan. Now I'm just wondering where my, I've lost my presenter view somewhere in all of my monitors. So just give me a second, and while I find it again. Oops, that's not it. I wonder if I closed it. I'll have to open it again. Right, got it. Okay. So this is the Horizon payments model. Basically, I'll start off, and this is a very simple way of looking at it, which is probably the best way to start. So you've got someone who's paying for some sort of service, and they somehow, the arrow going round the loop, end up paying a provider for some service they request from the provider. Now, because this is a permissionless network, we can't just pay them in advance, and
Rem?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sorry to interrupt. I thought it was just me, but it seems like a few people can't see your screen. It says you've been disconnected, error 2007. So maybe try unsharing your screen and then resharing again, maybe.
Okay, let me try that.
I thought it was just me. Like other people have to hop in and out.
I'm now looking at my own stream saying the stream has ended. Let's try that again then.
Only affecting some of us, yeah. All right, it seems to be working.
How about that?
Same error. Ooh, same error for me. That's really strange. I swear it was just working earlier. You can see it now. Andrew seems to be able to see it. Oh, here we are. Boom, boom. I can see it. Just came through.
Okay. I'll presume it's there unless someone says they've been disconnected again. Okay, so
everyone seems to see it. Thank you so much.
You've got a payer there. Somehow some payment flows to the provider, but it being a permissionless network, the payer and the provider don't necessarily trust each other. And the way Horizon solves that is through a couple of mechanisms. So one of the key ones is a payments escrow. So the payer puts the money into an escrow, it holds the fund, the provider, and by the way, this is reasonably generic terminology. Most of the time, provider means indexer. The payer puts some money into escrow so that the provider can see it's there. And then there's also a mechanism called graph payments. It's another contract. So both payments escrow and graph payments are contracts on chain that distributes any payment when a payment has to be made. So if you've been serving queries, the query payments through Horizon will have been distributed via graph payments, and the gateway will have been, or each node on behalf of the gateway will have been putting GRT into the escrow. Any questions so far? It looks like I'm being compared to some world leaders.
No, I think you were just making silly jokes in the chat.
I'm going to do it. Okay, so the delegators come into that flow as well. Won't spend too much time on them. You kind of know the deal with them. But there's still a missing piece in the middle here called a collector, right? Because in the Horizon model, there needs to be a trigger that says, okay, these funds can now be released from escrow and therefore distributed according to the rules. Also involved, it's actually, and this is not necessarily always the case, but it's one key model that is actually how it's working at the moment. There's a data service provided in that flow. So essentially what happens is the provider, the indexer, calls collect or tells the data service they want to collect whatever fees are due. The data service basically verifies that all the right information has been provided and tells the associated collector, yes, it's okay, you can release the funds according to these rules, and they get distributed via graph payments. Okay, shall I stop there briefly? So far, yes, so we're probably all clowns at school at some stage, but yes. At this point, I'm still presuming that no questions means good. You're all following it. It was the objective to try and go through these a bit slower rather than hand wavy. Now, I'm going to make this specific about the subgraph service and query fees. So the three highlighted boxes, the payer, the data service, and the collector in this context are very specific ones. So the data service is actually the subgraph service. The payer in this context is actually the gateway, essentially, and graph tally collector is the collector. So I'm sure when you've been interacting with these components, as indexers, you have seen these components. You would have you're probably aware you're interacting with indirectly with the graph collector. You might not, but you know that you are collecting the receipts, an interaction between with the gateway essentially, and that when at a certain point of time you end up requesting payment space for those queries from the subgraph service by providing those receipts as evidence. And I'm just pausing. I don't see any questions. It's a bit like my section might be just as quick today as all the others, because I'm not trying to explain something very complex. I'm just trying to show how all the pieces fit together. But if there's no queries on the query fee side, I'll move on to the indexing fees. So the indexing fees are, if you like, the newer part, right? You've all been collecting query fees, I hope, but you haven't yet been collecting indexing fees. Of course, indexing fees is the other side of the payments side, right? So it's an indexing payment from the perspective of the party that's paying it, and it's an indexing fee from perspective of the party that's charging a fee for us. So how does this work with substreams? I guess the same. I don't actually know the details, but I do know that actually they are, I believe, also trying to make it work with the graph collector, etc. I don't actually know the precise details, but basically it does. The intent is that it does fit into the same framework.
I just tagged the GraphOps guys in the chat. Any thoughts on that?
And I think that means any thoughts, and I'll go back to the where it's still showing query fees. I'll leave it there and carry on. They can answer later if they have. Okay, so we move on to indexing fees. The data service stays the same. We're still talking about the subgraph service, but again, the payer and the collector are going to be different. So the payer in this case is actually going to be a contract called the recurring agreement manager. It's a recurring agreement manager that actually is responsible for managing the agreement on chain and ensuring that the funds are placed in escrow. Talked a little bit more about the flow of, just from an agreement point of view, a couple of weeks ago and the week before that. But you probably didn't see this diagram, which I hope helps place it into context. And then the collector is a component called the recurring collector, and it's a collector that understands the nature of a recurring agreement, where you can be collecting a certain amount over a period of time on an ongoing basis, basically to cover, in this case, indexing. Although the recurring collector itself doesn't know that it's dealing with indexing agreements. It's actually the subgraph service that manages the fact that it's about indexing agreements, and the recurring agreement manager actually doesn't need to know, and doesn't know that it's about indexing agreements per se. It just knows that an agreement is being offered to a provider, an indexer, that the recurring collector is being used as a collector, and the subgraph service is being used as the data service. And that process is triggered by providing a POI. Yes, so when I think that's the question is about when you want to collect for indexing. Yes, you present a POI. And I think one has answered the question about substreams, and it basically is confirming, yes, it's fitting into the same framework. It's still the graph tally collector, which was on the previous page shown for query fees, but the way the receipts are accumulated is slightly different. Now, that is actually all I have to this diagram. There are some other things I can potentially go into if people have some questions, but I'm going to actually before I pause there. Well, I will briefly pause. Any questions on that, and I'll go back and show you actually what the original model looked like.
I was just typing, so and so is Mark Andre,
Yeah.
so there might be some questions coming.
Yeah, let me wait. Yeah, it's the same. It's actually determined by what the data service says, but essentially, yes, the basis is the same. And there's a question about imagine an indexer that doesn't claim eligible rewards that were passed into their escrow, maybe a 0x0 POI. Are they stuck there forever? So when we, if you can't, let me go back to, so the 0x0 POI is a mechanism used for indexing rewards because the allocation can go stale. And if the allocation goes stale, then you can't collect anymore on it. You forfeit all the rewards up to that point, and someone can force close the allocation. So if the reason you end up then needing a 0 POI is to say, well, okay, I've not synced yet on this chain. I'm not ready to collect yet, but I don't want it to go stale either. So the 0 POIs get submitted to stop the allocation going stale, and therefore still being able to collect once you have synced. There is no need for that in the indexing fees model, because in the indexing fees model, you submit a POI for how far you've got, and you might not be up to chain head yet. That's part of the understanding and expectation sometimes when you're indexing something that you didn't immediately sync in up to the last epoch. So because of that, because you can be presenting POIs as you go, for even though you haven't reached chain heads, you don't need to submit a 0 POI at any stage. So that's kind of it. Yeah, and I'm just reading the questioner again, because you're saying, are those stuck there for forever? Are they swept out at some point? So I wouldn't really have described them as stuck in the indexing rewards scenario either, right? So because when you submit a zero POI, those rewards that you had the entitlement to collect if you presented a valid POI are lost at that point, right? They're not stock per se, they're lost. But again, on the indexing payment side, you don't really have that scenario. You claim for the work up to the point you've got so far. You have a ceiling, you have a limit as to how much you can charge, but you don't have that scenario of saying, oh, I'm losing these rewards because I didn't claim them. There is a slight caveat there. There is a minimum and a maximum number of seconds that you can claim for that are set up in the agreement. So if more time has elapsed since the last time you collected, which is either since you actually accepted the agreement, or if you subsequently collected on that agreement, if more time has elapsed than that maximum time, you can't claim more than the per second rate times that maximum time, but you can still claim up to that amount. So it doesn't get lost. You still want, but obviously you want to claim before the work that you've done potentially exceeds the maximum that can be claimed. So next question. Yeah, Marc-Andre, I kind of agree with that. Let me think about that as well. If that's if we need to provide more flexibility there. Any other questions?
I was typing, so question.
Not to stop the questions, but I will probably take this. Yes, may depend on the service we're providing. I agree. So just takes this diagram back actually to this earlier state. And as you saw, and all of the transitions, all of the components stayed in the same place, right? I introduced them, built them up, but the payer and the collector and the data service, well, they changed which specific instance they all stayed in the model with the same basic interactions. And that's actually part of when we say that Horizon is built on primitives and allows different data services, etc., to come onto the network and play on the network. So this is a key part of how that model works, right? That any of the collectors we produce aren't necessarily specific to any particular data service or any particular payer. So we happen to have subgraph service running on the network, and we happen to have a graph tally collector that subgraph service is using for query fees. Our substreams are going to use graph tally collector as well, as you've heard. And we've also added this recurring collector now, which again, it is not tied to the subgraph service. It can be used in combination with another data service. And I'm going to take this diagram actually back to the final version, where you can see, so there's a recurring collector, a recurring agreement manager isn't tied to just working with the subgraph service. It's not tied to just working with the recurring collector either. And interestingly, this model changed slightly while this was being developed, and I might not have used the name recurring agreement manager if I was starting from scratch, but it is the name we've got now. Now, yeah, this okay, it might be we have run out of questions on that. Oh no, someone is still typing. The typing has stopped. I'm just having a quick look, but I'm not. That kind of covers the main thing. I do maybe not sure if anything else is directly relevant to this, and I probably should not start a complete new topic.
I like that.
Interestingly, there was a previous name that come up that did have those initials, which I kind of avoided, although it wasn't that. It was because escrow starts with E, right? If I'd put escrow in the middle, it would have been REM. But actually, the what I wanted to rename it to ultimately was collection agreement manager, actually, because it ends up that it's a component on the network that can manage agreements for any collector that is based on that agreement model. It looks a bit like we've all run out of questions today. I knew that wasn't a big heavy topic, but I did wonder if people would have, how many questions people would have. Let me see. I won't go back into detail about the agreement lifecycle itself. I kind of covered that last time. Maybe I can switch to Okay, that's why. I'm not going to go through this again, but there are parts of here I probably didn't. So I just wanted to draw up this kind of interaction diagram again, because it's kind of, just in terms of what we're talking about, shows how the indexes calls collect with CPOI. Subgraph service is essentially validating the agreement and the amount. The recurring collect in this case manages the release from escrow. It doesn't show payments escrow here, but it's graph payments that actually pulls it from the payments escrow and then distributes it.
Are there any thoughts, questions on anything that we discussed here, or maybe Ram, anything else you want to cover?
I've got nothing I specifically want to cover. No, partly, as I said at the beginning, there are other areas to potentially go into, but I didn't get more of my slide material, more of my presentation material ready. So it's really just a combination of what I had before and what you've just seen.
We can just have like a a verbal discussion of the stuff you had in mind, if that's easy for you.
It probably doesn't work as well because I sort of have, I think, verbally described some of those things, and what and the reason I came back with this, I was trying to make it a little bit more visual and tangible.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Does anyone have any additional thoughts on anything we discussed here in terms of what Rem's discussed? I think all the questions were answered. But in case anyone has any further thoughts, would love to hear. Otherwise, we can wrap that section and say thank you to Rem for going into detail right there. When you get the slides for the other sections that you want to cover, just let me know and we can get another slot booked in for you. I see.
Sure. Just in relation to that, shall I just ask? Are there any other parts of the protocol people particularly would like to have explained that I should go into a little bit of detail on in a future session at some stage?
I would love to hear this from people, because obviously, if people are able to, you can target your next presentation on that. So yeah, if anyone have any thoughts on specifics there? If not verbally, then feel free to type in the chat. I also see that Slim's here, so I'm going to follow up on what Petko was saying here in the chat about the REO update. You want to go into that, Slim, if you have a minute?
Yep, from a technical perspective, the REO is currently undergoing testing. Rem is the one that is also a running point on the testing, so he might be able to to give any update there on how far along. And then on the other side, we also presented the council with a governance proposal to enable the contracts and the rewards eligibility oracle. So Rem, do you want to give an update on
Yes.
the technical implementation and testing?
Yes, I was hearing that question, thinking I knew it was going to come back to me, but I'd let Slim answer first. So yes, it has been delayed slightly in a couple of ways. One, from the governance side, it's a bit, I guess it's slightly a bit complex, and the council, I think, had some other agenda items to cover as well. But hopefully you'll get back to that and get approval for that. There are some significant questions to work through and make sure it's understood. So it's not a complete surprise that a little bit of time needs to be taken to process that. And on the other side, I had a little bit of a delay getting some responses in for the latest audit round, sort of just discovering some things as we go that weren't really quite broken, but also didn't really necessarily give us the best way of operating it once we rolled it out. Anyway, I've submitted all of that, and I'm actually busy working on the deployment to try and, now that it's back in audit, get the next round of testing going again with all of the final, we hope final, if they're not final, hopefully just minor tweaks to the contracts, the versions of the contracts tested again in parallel. So that hopefully, although several things have taken longer than we hoped, hopefully once those all clear, they're all clear in parallel and we get it rolled out.
Stuff. Well, best of luck with that. Hopefully that goes smoothly. Any questions, thoughts on the update there from Rem and Slim?
So I think Matthew is typing here, so he knows that I'm going to come with an update also on the substream powered subgraphs. So yeah, we looked at the amount of usage that we have on substream powered subgraphs. As you know, the latest version of GraphNode does not support that pathway anymore, or substream powered subgraphs. So we looked at the usage, and over the last 30 days, there's less than like 40,000 queries globally across all of the substream powered subgraphs. And that is also way less than the amount that we require for chains to be supported with indexing rewards. So those subgraphs will be deprecated. So I'll be posting an update later today, and in the index announcement channel. But yeah, you that are on the call will already know that by the end of the week we will be deprecating those subgraphs from the subgraph availability oracle, and there will no longer be rewards. So indexes that are currently having any open allocation should close them by Friday. And ideally, if you see there's a query volume on those subgraphs, that you reopen a smaller allocation. But that is entirely up to you. So potentially something that we can also help with dips once that goes live as well. I think there's 3 subgraphs currently with some volume on, so it's not a large amount of subgraphs that are using this particular features.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the update there. Any thoughts, guys? Then what I'll do is I'll take the opportunity to say thank you to everyone for joining today's Next Office Hours. Bit of a quiet one, but I think that's a good thing. You know, everyone's questions were answered throughout the presentation, which was good. And yeah, we're getting thanks for all the updates all around, which is great. So yeah, thank you, Rem, thank you, Slim, thank you, Petco, for all of the updates that you guys gave and the responses you gave in the chat there. Really do appreciate that, and of course, thank you to Juan and Carlos as well for their sections. Okay, to anyone who spoke today, any final thoughts? Just feel free to interrupt me or shout. I'll wrap today's conversation. A bunch of people saying thanks, so I'll say thank you to everyone, and see you again same time next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.